part this afternoon. My name is Mark Wallert, and I'm the director for the Dubuque Museum of Art, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to another episode, I should say, of our Famous Dead Artist series. For me, it's one of my favorite programs that we do, and the last reason is because I get to participate in it, but it's one of those things that combines history, art history, biography, theater, into a really unique program. And I, as much I think as anyone, probably learned more from this series about a particular artist and an art form than almost any other program that I've witnessed at this museum or pretty much anywhere else that I've gone. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learned something today. Before we get started, I have several people I would like to thank. First of all, if I could ask for your applause for MediaCom, who sponsored this event. Without their support, this event and these series of programs would be most difficult, so we're so thankful for that. I also want to thank our wonderful staff here at the Dubuque Museum of Art. Diane Sass, our Deputy Director. Diane's back there. Stacy Gage, our Collections and Exhibitions Manager, who during these performances helps with all our technology side of things. Thank you, Stacy. And of course, I have to give greatest thanks to Margie Burr, our Director of Education. If you've been to these programs before, you know that someone is behind the scenes putting together a wonderful amount of research and script writing. Margie does all of that. And each individual performance, like we're doing today, takes months of work on her part, researching material, finding out about these wonderful artists' lives and work, crafting that into what we hope to be both an educational and entertaining script. And I just can't thank Margie enough for all of the blood, sweat, and tears that she puts into this. So thank you again. And of course, I need to thank Kevin Fernstall, who'll be portraying Toulouse-Lautrec today. Like Margie, Kevin put an uncountable number of hours into this performance and has really been working very hard to perfect this character and to resurrect Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec as best as we can in these days. But on Kevin's behalf, he wanted me to thank Lenore Howard and Kathy Goodman for helping him to perfect this character. And so thank you for your work. And last but not least, I just want to say after the performance today, the museum's open till 4 p.m. If you haven't already had a chance to see our wonderful citywide student exhibition, ranging in age from kindergarten through 12th grade, we are so happy to be able to show the students' art here. We have nearly 600 local students whose works are represented in our exhibit galleries here through May 6th. Both down here on the main floor as well as upstairs. And of course our wonderful Langling Gallery, which features works from our permanent gallery, now featuring Grant Wood as always, as well as our wonderful works on loan of Thomas Moran. So if you have not had a chance to see those, please do enjoy our exhibits. And now without any more commercials or thank yous, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you all this afternoon to Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. Good afternoon, Monsieur Lautrec, and welcome to the Dubuque Museum of Art.
Bonjour, ça va? How good it is to be in your charming city with the French name, Dubuque.
Indeed.
It almost makes me feel at home.
Well, you are most welcome. And before we begin, Monsieur, I have to apologize. My French is very poor, so I apologize if I tend to slaughter your language, so to speak. Now, if you would, Monsieur, how would you like to be addressed during our time this afternoon?
Oh, since I am feeling most congenial and democratic, you may call me Henri.
Merci, Henri. If we could, maybe for starters, tell us a little bit about your background. You are of noble birth, yes?
Oh, I am descended from the Counts of Toulouse and the Viscounts of Lautrec. My forebears took on popes and kings, and made it through the revolution with our fortune and our heads intact.
In your opinion, does aristocracy have its rewards?
Well, having no useful employment, our vocation is vice. we consider it our duty to sample each one. Of course, it is much easier when you are accountable to no one.
Indeed, indeed. Now, Henri, your parents were first cousins, whose marriage was what I'd call a misalliance from the very beginning.
Oh, a misalliance of temperaments. Once the amour fizzled, they found themselves short on conversation.
Let's begin more specifically with your father. He was, again, from what I know, quite a colorful character.
My father come from an old and a noble family. A bit tinged in the head, but that is due to a lack of new blood when it came time to the breeding. My father, Count Alphonse, was a career officer in the cavalry, and he gave up on the military, or did the military give up on him? When it became obvious that he was constitutionally incapable of following orders. He preferred to lounge about and play tunes on his bugle and sketch his fellow officers.
Now, your father took much pleasure in the sporting life, and as you said, he was in the cavalry and was quite an avid horseman as well.
Oh, during the hunting season, father boasted that he could wear out 3 horses a day. Probably the same number of women, too.
So he had a roving eye then?
Oh, that is a modest way of describing his galloping libido. He preferred farm girls, servants, barmaids. They were the expedient choice as they did not mix matters of love with copulation.
Now, in addition to collecting women, he had an eye for collecting other things as well.
Oh, father's collection was as unprincipled and contradictory as he was. Medicines, harnesses, cookie recipes, moth-eaten documents, samurai swords.
He had another hobby, dressing up as well, which you later on adopted.
Yeah, cowboy shops, Highlander kilts, Crusader helmets. Father wore them all, and sometimes all at the same time. Once he come down to luncheon wearing a dancer's tutu. Mother was not pleased.
Your mother must have been quite a patient soul to put up with this sort of behavior. Can you tell us more about her, Henri?
My darling mother, the Countess Adele. She was sweet-natured, pious, thrifty. Her virtues bordered on the bourgeois.
So, her family then was not of nobility?
No. She come from a long line of shrewd businessmen. They accumulated over the centuries properties, vineyards. Father had the title, mother had the capital.
Now, your parents actually knew each other as children. Your mother seemed to be dazzled by your father's larger-than-life personality, but neither seemed to possess the qualities that the other could respect or emulate. But somehow they managed to fall in love.
Father claims that mother could not resist the sight of him in a pair of tight riding trousers. Father was expected to marry someone that could add to the family coffers and provide a son. Mother was suitable and pretty, and for a time the flame flickered.
Now, their marriage results from what you've described as an impetuosity of impulse, and was passionate, but it turns out to be an ill-advised union from the beginning.
Well, marriage between first cousins was forbidden by the church, but when one has power and money, rules can't be circumvented. Mother loved the father in the beginning, till she was disappointed in that love.
They seem to live a life of sort of aimless adventure, moving from a chateau to hunting lodges to townhouses as the seasons or as their whims dictate. And into this somewhat exclusive world, you were born at 6 a.m. on November 24th, 1864, on the family estate, Le Château Bosque in Albi, a town in southern France.
Mother prayed for a son. Father refused to consider it might be a girl. He once told me that it is better to be a male toad than it is to be a female Christian. Little did he know what was coming.
And Henri, even before you were born, your name was chosen.
Henri Marie Ramon de Toulouse-Lautrec Montfort. A fine name for the eldest son of the eldest son. Many hopes were riding on me.
Your father was so proud at the time of your birth that he actually gathered you up in his arms and strolled you through the town hall to register your birth.
And immediately afterwards, they left on a hunting trip and did not return for Christmas 1 month later.
Oh. Your father, it seems, is gone for weeks at a time. Riding and hunting were a form of escape for him. It took him outdoors and away from the constraints of the convention of the day.
Father wrote a dedication in a hunting book. Should you one day experience the bitterness of life, the horse, the hound, and the hawk will be precious companions and help you forget things a little. Remember that a life outdoors is the only healthy kind, and everything that is deprived of its liberté loses its essence and quickly dies.
Oh, that's quite a telling quote indeed. Now, early on, your parents lead very separate lives. Divorce for a Catholic of their social status is still unthinkable at that time. The constant companions, you and your mother form a very close bond. She's overprotective, but she has quite a good reason.
Mother learned to expect the unexpected from father. She learned to be stoic in adversity and proved her worth through prayer and by being an exemplary mother. I was a fragile child with one sickness after another. And I lagged behind other children physically.
Despite that, you were a precocious child, and your mother is charmed by your bright and inquisitive nature.
Well, my body failed me, but my spirit, my mind was very curious. How you say curious?
You had an affectionate mind?
I was a very affectionate child, but accustomed to getting my own way.
There is, in fact, a family story that illustrates your stubbornness.
Nanny and I were touring a great cathedral when nature called. I raised my voice and commanded, "I must pee! I must pee!" Nanny responded too slowly, so I wet the centuries-old mosaic floor. A real artistic treasure.
Now, your parents actually reunite briefly for the sole purpose of hopefully conceiving a stronger child. Your brother Richard is born in 1867, but he too is quite delicate, and in fact he lives less than a year.
When my father died, or brother died, my father resumed his nomadic ways, owning many properties, prevented my parents from meeting unintentionally.
Despite being out of touch much of the time, however, your father still takes quite an interest in your education. He feels that it has to reflect the status of the son of a nobleman. In fact, though, he leaves the details to your mother.
A series of tutors taught me lessons in dancing and drawing, Greek, Latin, French, German, English, equestrian, falconry subjects, all deemed useful to a man of my social standing.
Eventually, you attend a day school for children of privilege.
Lessons became secondary to art. My exercise books were filled with sketches and caricatures rather than sums and sentences.
Sketchings and paintings were actually a family trait. Your father and uncle were accomplished draftsmen, and your father also modeled animals in plaster.
when the weather turned bad, we would all gather by the fire and sketch. The living room turned into a painting studio. We were never short of subjects, as there was always someone on the estate willing to pose. And at 15, I completed my first oil painting, a rifleman saddling his horse.
Quite good for 15. Now, however, Henri, often sick and unable to engage in much vigorous exercise, you cultivate a menagerie of 2- and 4-legged creatures that serve as inspiration for your work.
Parrots, owls, hounds, horses, monkeys were all pets and models. Parrots especially obsessed me, as I thought that they were evil and that the devil had taken on the form of a parrot. Oh, all they want a soul.
Now, Henri, your weak constitution continues to be a problem throughout your childhood. You suffer from a series of ailments, headaches, toothaches, rashes, all sorts of things. In an attempt to strengthen your legs, you actually endure a contraption that's eventually strapped to them, and your mother prays constantly for a miracle.
It's, how you say,
Well, at one point you went to Lourdes, correct?
Yes, we went to Lourdes seeking a miracle, but my mother's prayers for divine intervention went unanswered, and later trips to the clinics yielded the same result.
Although disappointed by your lack of vigor, your father continues to encourage your interest in art. He introduces you to a family friend, the artist René Princeteau. A renowned painter of horses. He gives you lessons and allows you to observe him in his work.
Princeteau called me Le Petit. He looked over my drawings and saw that I had a gift for line. It came to me that perhaps one day I could do that.
He also introduces you to the work of the Romantic painter Delacroix, whose work also inspires you.
Delacroix is a restless line, so much energy and motion that was so uniquely his. I wanted that in my work. So, inspired by Delacroix, I painted Father Falconim, and in my mind it was a successful likeness.
Princeteau was known for a mocking wit, which he directed at the absurd and the ridiculous. He shared your father's contempt for convention, and both were indifferent to what others said and did.
I adopted that attitude, and it became a shield from these swipes and these stares that would later come my way.
As you approach adolescence, Henri, your long bones begin to atrophy at the joints, and you do not experience normal growth spurts. Serious pain in your legs keeps you immobilized for literally days at a time.
I would spend days in the bed with my watercolor set, painting partridges, hare, roe deer. It was a bloodless way of capturing them. Once I was able to go outside, I would sketch the poultry in the farmyard, horses pulling wagons, and the baboon my grandmother kept as a companion. Princeteau says that my sketches had gusto and vitality.
At 13, you have quite a tragic accident. Getting up from a low chair, you trip and fall, and your bones give way, and your left femur is fractured.
Yeah, 4 weeks, they put the leg in a plaster, and I settled in for another long confinement. My mother was distraught. The bones failed to meet. I tried to make a joke of my clumsiness, but once I was able to move around, we set out for the spas and the clinics. Me with my trusty walking stick, and my mother with her hope for a miracle that never came.
In fact, 15 months later, your leg is improving enough for you to be able to go for walks in the countryside. Out for a stroll with your mother, you slip and fall again into a shallow ditch, this time fracturing your right femur.
The bones he took less time to heal, but I was left with permanent damage. I could sense the frustration of my parents. Their son would never have the active life of a gentleman, no military career, no hunting, little prospect of marriage, little chance of carrying on the family line.
You contend with other physical challenges in addition to your damaged legs. As a consequence of your parents being first cousins, you're born with a genetic disease which manifests itself in dwarfism. You stop growing at 4'11". Drool runs from your extended lower lip, and your hands are oversized and splaying stubs for fingers. You describe your walk as a waddle.
Staring in the mirror, I saw the caricature I'd become.
Despite your off-putting appearance, many remark on the unforgettable warmth of your eyes, Henri. Looking into them, they seem to forget your deformities.
My body had failed me, but my mind, my spirit was still alive. I refused to be a cripple and be exiled from life.
Excluded from the conventional pursuits of a wealthy young man, you turn to art, and a fury of painting overtakes you.
My room was filled with things that did not deserve the name of dome. Horses became my subject of choice, and I analyzed their every movement like a connoisseur.
Despite this passion, your mother does eventually insist that you complete your studies towards a baccalaureate degree.
I neglected everything. I have friends, drawing, everything on earth that deserved attention for dictionaries and lesson books. The examiners passed me despite the stupidity I displayed. I answered their questions with non-existing quotes to show how erudite I was. But the professor welcomed me with open arms, and I celebrated by sketching his bald head and huge spectacles. So anyway, it was over and done with, and no one and nothing could keep me from painting anymore.
Now, having completed this degree, you are ready for some excitement. The countryside bores you, and you long for Paris. You moved there with your mother in April of 1882 to begin your formal art studies, and at this time you were 18.
My mother wanted me to be happy. Painting was an occupation compatible with the family dignity.
Now, you enroll in the teaching studio of Léon Bonnat, a painter of portraits and historical subjects. And Bonnat was loyal to French tradition in painting and declared the Impressionists humbugs and revolutionaries. They seemed to take liberties with form that he did not appreciate.
Bonnat was a progressive. I was on the lookout for the newest thing. He introduced me to the work of Cézanne and Manet and Degas. But being classically trained and used to the work of the salon painters, I found their work most stimulating.
Bonnat, however, is a taskmaster and is not kind in his critiques of your work.
Bonnat looked at my work and said, "A child could do better." That put blood, ginger in my veins, and I doubled my efforts. Once I acted on impulse. Now I worked with self-control. I copied the plaster casts and learned composition. More importantly, I discovered that without discipline, nothing serious is possible.
Now, Bonnat closes his studio after a few months, and you enter the studio of Fernand Cormont, a successful history painter who is more positive about your talent.
Cormont was not a taskmaster. He come to the studio twice a week, and he would hop from easel to easel like a bird, criticizing this and commenting on that. I feared that I would slip into mediocrity.
Gradually, Henri, you realize that your spirit would be crushed if you were a salon painter. You leave Cormant's studio in 1884 with mixed emotions. You return briefly, however, in 1886.
I was not meant to regurgitate the art of the past.
You're not able to identify with your contemporaries, the Impressionists, either.
The Impressionists were all brutes with their dumbable landscapes. I wanted to paint the real, not the ideal.
You actually befriend at this time the artists Vincent van Gogh and Émile Bernard in Cormant's studio.
Van Gogh was an idealist whose ideas never took flight. He organized a group show at a popular restaurant that was a fiasco. It was his art that I admired and not his organizational skills. I, from time to time, would borrow his staccato brushstroke. And from time to time, he would borrow money from me.
Quite a partnership. Now, Van Gogh actually poses for a portrait with you in one of these cafes that was a meeting place for students.
Van Gogh was a man of moral principles. I suggested that he painted the south of France. I felt that the light and the landscapes would be beneficial to his work.
As one whose main concern is depicting the figure, the work of Edward Degas also strikes a chord with you.
With Degas, it was all about the figure. He used photography to orient his canvas in a new way, and I wanted to try that.
And in fact, you also use photography often in your studio.
I hired a photographer to document my work, which was not often done, as few artists had the means.
Now, Van Gogh and Degas also collect Japanese prints, and they're yet another important influence on your work.
We were all taken with the lack of perspective and asymmetry in those woodcuts. The marvelous areas of flat color were a revelation.
Now, within the insular world of your studio, your studio friendships, you're quite accepted. Your wit is a weapon and are a master of deflating the rude comments about your appearance.
I did not want to hide. I would say, look at me, look at my posture, so lucky in elegance, my big behind, my potato nose, I walk like a duck. Am I not a magnificent specimen? It often amused me when I heard people say, the oftener you see him, the taller he grows.
You paint a parody at one point of Puvet-Chauvin's prize-winning work, The Sacred Grove. It is quite a success among your fellow students.
My friends showed my distaste for the sentimental and the classic. It was a lark to inject them into that classic scene.
Now, an allowance from your parents sets you apart from the other students who are on what we'd consider a tight budget. You held parties on Friday nights, unlike most of your countrymen, and you're not a wine purist. You prefer American-style cocktails. You concoct a series of short drinks, exotic cocktails named in your honor, and you are encouraged to sample them all.
I was as greedy as a bishop's cat and would drink anything that tasted like a peacock's tail in the mouth. My invention, absinthe, I call the earthquake, 1/2 absinthe, 1/2 cognac, did just that.
Now, it's on one of your nightly excursions that you discover the transforming capabilities of alcohol.
Everything is more bearable when one is under the influence. Alcohol gives the excitement that seems like strength and the frenzy that simulates joy.
Goaded on by your fellow students, you also lose your virginity around this time.
They took me to a prostitute. Henri Charlotte, only 17 years old, with red hair. She was curious about the unknown, far from innocent. So the little man with the big hands held an appeal.
Now, Marie Charlotte enjoys your company and actually boasts of your talents as a lover, Henri.
My nickname was Teapot. The well-endowed dwarf, short in stature, long in spout. That kind of publicity would draw the attention of the working girls, and I was bored with the women of breeding, so I was happy to find release with the hordes.
You actually have an acknowledged weakness for women with red hair. And one of your first lovers, Suzanne Valadon, is an artist model who posed for both Renoir and Degas, and her real ambition is to be a painter herself.
Suzanne, she come through life with a fair amount of animal cunning. We showed the same contempt for affectation, but we come from different worlds. I would sketch her, how you say?
Her wildness seemed to suit you.
Her beauty had an aesthetic quality that I found invigorating.
She actually poses for you, and you teach her the secrets of your painting trade. Eventually, your strong personalities, however, seem to clash, Henri.
Suzanne's temper was volcanic, like Van Gogh. Her intensity overwhelmed me, and I quit her when she tried to trap me into marriage by feigning suicide.
Your long hours in the studio bear fruit, and your work becomes more assured. A life as a successful working artist seems to be within your grasp. One obstacle, however, still stands in your way.
My father, he considered me a dark horse and was concerned that I would bring shame upon the family name and asked me to invent a new one. I signed my paintings Triclo, an anagram for my name, or I did not sign them at all.
With quite a firm grasp of the fundamentals, you're now ready to begin your life as a young painter in Paris. It is 1885.
How do you say?
It was a dream of your parents, in fact.
My son, the salon painter, as my parents would say. My father offered to rent an apartment for me in a fashionable part of Paris near the Arc de Triomphe, but I had a different location and a different dream in mind.
In fact, you settle in Montmartre, a quiet village in northern Paris, set upon a hill removed from the city center. Montmartre is becoming a haven for artists who want to work and play free from care in a more bohemian environment.
Father refused to pay for an apartment in that near that nest of ne'er-do-wells. So I moved in with my friend René Gournier. He was a friend from the Corman studio, an amateur artist from a wealthy family, and the kind of person my father wanted me to associate with.
Now, realizing that for you it was Montmartre or nothing, your father eventually gives in and gives you money for a studio and an apartment. Montmartre becomes your home actually for 15 years.
Montmartre was outside the law. I could wander about freely without embarrassment, and as people come familiar with me, they would stop turning to stare.
The number of dance halls and bars in Montmartre appeal to your sense of adventure. Around every corner seems to lurk a promise for a new sensation.
One tavern owner said it. What is Montmartre? Montmartre is nothing. What could it be? It can be everything.
Montmartre's nightclubs and dance halls were a pleasure seeker's paradise, and you seem to have sampled it all in your time. Le Chat Noir, the Black Cat, as we might say in English, is a gathering place for avant-garde artists of all kinds who actually use it as a lab to recite poems, sing songs, exhibit their paintings. Le Chat Noir is owned by Rudolph Sally, an audacious showman never at a loss for devising ways to shock the public.
Sally was an exhibitionist. He once announced his own death with a notice on the door that said, open because of death, and then presided over his own funeral in a golden robe.
Now, Aristide Bruant is a singer at Le Chat Noir. When Le Chat moves to larger quarters, Bruant takes over the space and renames it Le Merleton. Everyone goes to Merleton, excuse me, to be insulted.
Bruant's early life was difficult, and the bitterness seeped into his songs. He would say, everyone that comes to Le Merleton are idiots. They do not know to understand my songs, and they never will. He serves them cheap beer and treats them like dogs. Yeah, his sympathies were with the poor and the outcast.
And where do your sympathies lie on
Certainly not with the needy. Poverty repulses me in particular. Humanity interests me in general.
Now, Bruant, becomes a good friend. He admires your work and asks you to contribute a painting for a wall filled with portraits of prostitutes.
I painted one of the heroines from one of Bruant's songs, a prostitute writing from prison to her man, and it joins the ladies on a wall of family portraits in a bourgeois drawing room. He relished spitting in the eye of respectability.
You also create a number of posters for Bruant with his signature black hat and red scarf.
Bruant had the profile of a Roman emperor and the skull of a person on the defensive.
Henri, a sketchbook accompanies you on your nocturnal jaunts. You fill it with innumerable drawings of the memorable characters you meet. Opening in 1889, the Moulin Rouge is located at the foot of Montmartre Hill. It was promoted as a modern Babylon, the birthplace of the can-can. It attracted exotic people from all walks of life.
I was there on their opening night with my sketchbook. A special seat was always held in reserve for me, and it was the ideal location for watching the passing parade.
Although the Moulin Rouge is the home of the can-can, one of the specialties of the house is the quadrille. No one does it better than the notorious La Goulou.
La Goulou. Her birth name was Louise Weber, the Queen of Montmartre. Her dance was a deliberate tease of the male audience. She would twirl around and lift her skirts and show off her the embroidered heart on her panties. But the pièce de résistance was a high kick that would knock off the hats of the gentlemen. She made a lot of money off that act.
I bet she did. Now, La Goulou, what does that mean?
La Goulou, glutton.
Oh.
Glutton, yeah. Louise fancied drinking from the glasses of the customers, gasoline, and if you do that too often, you get fat, which is what happened to La Goulou. And her, because of her weight, she was fired from Le Moulin Rouge because she could not dance for extended time. She ended her days selling peanuts, cigarettes, with her fortune all burned away. But not before I immortalized her in a poster.
Now, Moulin Rouge La Goulou is that poster, and one of the first that you designed. Charles Ziedler, the manager of Moulin Rouge, commissions you for the poster for the fall season.
It is La Goulou in action, and Valentin, the boneless one, in the foreground. It was a sensation, and it made me a star overnight.
For you, Henri, posters are a modern way to advertise everything from cigars to nightclubs. Between 1891 and 1894, you produce a series of 31 posters and actually revitalize the art form.
Charest, my competitor, made serviceable posters, but too conventional for my tastes. Lithography, I preferred, it suited me. It was a maximum impact with minimum clutter. I took my art from the studios to the streets.
Now, can you explain lithography a bit for those of us in the audience who may not know about it?
Oh, I will try to simplify it. Oil and water do not mix, right? So you will need a stone, preferably limestone, greasy pencils, ink, paper. The artist draws on the stone with the crayon, the greasy crayon, and then the ink is applied, and the paper is pressed over it. And if you have one color, one press, more colors, more presses, voila, poster. It is a time-consuming process, but it gave me the look that I was searching for.
The posters you create are actually quite large. They're 7 foot by 3.5 foot, and they require 3 sheets of separate paper to print. Henri, if we could actually continue to meet some of the other characters from the Moulin Rouge. The dancer Jane Avril was another inspiration for some of your best work.
Jean was a fallen angel. She danced to forget the sorrows of a cruel childhood.
Brought in to replace the lethargic La Goulou, Jane's approach is significantly different than hers.
Jean danced like a delicate apparition compared to the bunker-like proportions of La Goulou.
Her frenzied dancing style earns her legions of fans and a nickname.
Yeah, La Melanite, a form of dynamite. Her jerky style of dancing was as a result of a bout with the disease Saint Vitus dance.
Jane's red hair, turquoise eyes, and slim figure are an artist's dream. A refined lady, she moves with an aloof grace. As much as you appreciate her beauty, it is her indomitable spirit that you also respect.
Jeanne faced life without flinching. She did not know how to cry or beg or apologize.
Jane becomes a close friend and a muse. You draw her on the job as well as off duty.
At night, she was the epitome of elegance at La Moulin Rouge. During the day, she was a solitary figure, going about her routine. It was this double life that intrigued me.
You were, in fact, for quite a while, an important figure in her life.
I was a man obsessed. I would call upon her day and the night to sit for me. I would fix a meal or we would go out. Jane was more docile when her appetite was satisfied. And I would study her every gesture and make countless drawings.
Henri, if you'll excuse the bluntness, were you lovers?
Never. Jane was a loyal friend. I needed that more.
Another regular at La Moulin Rouge is Yvette Gilbert. She was an unlikely star with a harsh voice and unconventional singing style that actually achieved cult status.
Yvette had the profile of a gutter snipe swan. Like Jeanne, I studied her exhaustively and ransacked her body like an inquisitor.
Unlike many performers, Yvette is not vain about her appearance. A rather homely woman, she does not object when you portray her in a rather unflattering light. And in fact, you create 2 portfolios of drawings of Yvette.
While posing for me, she would toss back her head and say, "Henri, don't, for God's sake, make me so appallingly ugly." Just a little ugly, is that what
Despite an active social life, you have a strong work ethic. You are compelled to record the world around you, without sentiment and without bias. Although your PMs often stretch into your AMs, mornings find you again hard at work in the studio.
I had a large, bright studio, larger than most. There was a ladder that rose to the ceiling so I could work on large canvases. The floor was cluttered with canvases, cartoons, tracings. There were chairs and a couch with pillows, a rowing machine, a woman's corset, ballet slippers, pink dominoes, a white clown's hat, and over everything was a layer of dust. But the cleaning woman was forbidden from touching anything.
So you prefer to work undisturbed?
Oui. I become irritable when my concentration is disturbed.
So then silence is absolute while you work?
Never, not once do I speak while I am painting. Painting is a singular experience. It should not be muddled with words. How you say, not...
Well, how was the expression on your face when you painted?
One person said to me, the expression on your face while you are painting is that of a person devouring a tasty morsel.
Henri, you are truly a gentleman of many enthusiasms. Although the arena of entertainment captures much of your attention, you're also fascinated by the world of medicine.
On Saturdays, I would go to the hospitals and observe the surgeries. It was a way of passing the time, like going to the circus or to a play. I adored watching people being cut up and admired the dexterity of the surgeon's hands.
Now, despite your own physical abilities, the sporting world also holds your interest.
Oh, it did not matter what the sport was, cycling, horses, automobiles. It was the power and the movement that caught my attention.
The cycling firm of Simpson in London asked you to design a poster. It shows a rider in training.
I admired the bestial heads and the powerful muscles of the cyclists.
Obviously, participation in most sports is denied you because of your physical limitations. However, you do use a rowing machine in your studio, and you're also an avid swimmer.
In the water, all legs are equal.
Your many friends speak of your generosity and your zest for life. You have a passion for costumes, much like your father, and enjoy fancy dress parties.
It is something in the Lautrec blood. I draw the line at tutus.
Henri, your cousin, Gabriel Tapé de Saint-Laurent, is a constant companion. Younger than you, Tapé was a medical student and later a doctor in Paris. He admires you and looks up to you.
Oh, Tapé was a faithful and as forgiving as a family dog. He took my ridicule with humor and become indispensable to me.
He also appears in a number of paintings of yours. Now, Maurice Joyant, a childhood friend, is your promoter. He owns the Galerie Goupil and organizes all of your one-person shows. Joyant organizes the largest of these shows in London in May 1898. That's actually attended by the Prince of Wales. Although you are also represented by the renowned Bing and Durand Ruhl galleries, your partnership with Joyant is one of your most lasting and successful ones.
Maurice has set up commissions for me to paint portraits of society figures. His aim was to keep me occupied and to keep me away from alcohol, but his plan failed. I had no desire or interest in flattering my clients, but Maurice was a good and true friend who looked after my interests so I don't have to.
Throughout the late 1880s and into the 90s, you produced 360 prints and posters, over 700 paintings, 275 watercolors, and more than 5,000 drawings already. An astonishing output, especially given your social life. Your posters are exhibited alongside your paintings at La Levant Group at the Salon of Independent Artists. In 1892, the first extensive critique of your work appears in the newspaper Le Paris.
The critics, thankfully, were favorable. This one had it right. It is a long time since we met an artist as gifted as Toulouse-Lautrec. He depicts a human being's innate character on the mask of his outward appearance. Perhaps his authority derives from the integration of all his faculties.
An interesting critique. As I said, your work is shown in London, but also in Brussels and Holland and Spain. Traveling, however, for its own sake really has no interest for you.
Oh, I have a horror of travel guides and travel books. It doesn't matter whether I am in Turin or Timbuktu. But take me to a museum and sit me in front of a painting and I can sit for hours. Traveling is a good way to keep up on what is happening in the art world.
Which artists then do you admire most?
In Holland, it would have to be Rembrandt and Hals. In Spain, it would be Goya and Velasquez.
Oh. While in London, you meet James McNeill Whistler and Oscar Wilde. Wilde had been on trial for libel and was awaiting retrial. His personal life was in turmoil, and intrigued by him, you asked him to sit for you.
Wilde refused. He was caught up in something that was about to swallow him whole, and I could see that, and it frightened me.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, Henri, you frequent brothels and feel comfortable among the working girls. Actually, in 1893, you take the interest to an extreme and spend several months actually living at a brothel where you have a studio and also take your meals. Because of your kind and generous nature, the prostitutes trust you and allow you to observe them.
These women were alive while the others seemed stuffed. They would loll about on the furniture like animals without heirs.
You're most interested in portraying them passing the time while waiting for their clients.
I showed the tedium of their days, the medical exams, how they related to each other, the care of their bodies and their wardrobes, the time between clients.
You produced 50 paintings on this theme, prostitution, none of which were ever publicly exhibited during your lifetime. Elle, published in 1896, is an album of 111 color lithographs. It is your homage to women with an emphasis on prostitutes.
Elle was meant to expose the life of these women. Everyone knew that they existed. My friends even sampled their services. So it made no sense to me why they were outcast and treated as pariahs.
Unfortunately, Elle, this album of lithographs was a failure with the public.
It had no Jeanne Avril or Yvette Gilbert to ensure its success, so it had to make its own way despite the subject matter.
At this time, Henri, unfortunately, years of heavy drinking and brothel hopping begins to catch up with you.
My friend Rosa LaRouge, my friends warned me that she was infected, and I continued to see her. And for the curious out there, she had red hair.
And in fact, you contract syphilis from her. In the late stage syphilis, including fever and skin ulcers and loss of mental faculties, start to make their telltale appearance. By the late 1890s, you experience a mental and a physical crisis. You are subjected to violent outbursts and delirium tremens as a result of your progressive alcoholism. You become paranoid about germs. Events come to a head in February 1899 when you collapse in the street, breaking your collarbone.
My mother was tending her mother at the time and directed the housekeeper to keep an eye on me. She and many others believed that my behavior was socially unacceptable.
Instigated by your mother, you're forced into hospitalization at a psychiatric clinic in Neuilly in 1899, and it underscores the gravity of your situation.
I wrote to my father imploring him to behave humanely and release me from such incarceration. My appeals he was indifferent to, so I developed another strategy.
In fact, in order to demonstrate your sanity, you create 50 works while at the clinic. 39 are circus drawings.
Circus people are freaks, like me. Those drawings, I bought my liberté with those drawings.
You are released with the promise to abstain from all drinking. A distant relative, Admiral Villon, is engaged to keep you on the right path. Disgusted to have been assigned such a caretaker, you lash out and mock him, introducing him as my bare leader, a ruined man of the world.
Long ago, I ceased to find the path to abstinence a virtuous one. I hollowed out my walking stick to hold a flask of alcohol. The Admiral discovered it too late to make a difference.
Your health deteriorates rapidly, but you are able to attend the Paris Universal Exposition in 1900, where your work is exhibited. You view the sights while seated in a wheelchair.
The Japanese dancers and the elephants from the Congo would have once excited me. Now I was indifferent to them. So I traveled back to Bordeaux to settle in for the winter.
Returning to Paris in May of 1901, you put your studio in order and sign your remaining paintings.
I dragged myself back with great difficulty and tidied up my studio, finishing uncompleted works and destroying those that did not measure up. When I left the studio, it had the look of a cold museum. I said goodbye to my friends and told them to embrace me as I would not see them again.
You spend July and August with your mother and paint your last portrait. It is of your caretaker, Admiral Villon.
I would say he...
Well, you actually told your mother that you knew you were going to die.
I told mon mère that I was going to die. It was the ways that I was headed. I tried to soften the reality by telling her that how nice it would be now that she could make tea as often as she liked.
In late August, you suffer a stroke and are paralyzed. Your parents and cousins are with you at the end.
I reserved my final words for those that were in attendance. I looked up at my father and said, "Old fool." My mother was kneeling at the foot of the bed while the priest gave me the last sacraments. Mother, you, only you. And with my remaining strength, I whispered, "Dying is hard work."
You are 36 years old at your death on the morning of September 9th, 1901.
You may include as much or as little of this epilogue as you see fit.
Well, I'd like to point out the eccentricities of your father, Count Alphonse, continue at your funeral. He interrupts the solemn burial procession, and jumps alongside the coachman of the hearse. He wants to find out for himself if his son, Henri, is being taken to his last resting place in a manner befitting a gentleman. Finding that the horse is moving much too slowly, he cracks the whip to pick up the pace, and mourners walking behind the coffin, to laugh, actually have to run to keep up. After your death, your mother and friend Maurice Joyant make it their mission to promote your art. Your mother contributes funds to a museum to be created in Albi, your birthplace, to house your works. The Toulouse-Lautrec Museum now owns the world's largest collection of your work. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Henri. Henri, one last item, as we do with all of our guest artists who join us for this. I'd like to ask you 10 questions inspired by the French journalist Bernard Pivot. Would you indulge us?
Très bon.
Okay. Henri, what is your favorite word?
Vie, life, joie de vivre.
Yeah. What is your least favorite word?
Creeper.
What turns you on creative or spiritually or emotionally?
Simple verite, truth, own self-conscious beauty, nothing ideal.
What turns you off?
The poor side of life, the luxury of the poor is even more nauseating than their misery.
What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, merde.
What sound or noise do you love?
No sound.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Thunder. I was born during the thunderstorm, and my mother felt that it was a sign of bad things to come.
What profession other than your own would you have liked to have attempted?
Equestrian, cyclist, physician, movement, power.
What profession would you not have wanted to try?
Impressionist. Why should I beautify nature when it has betrayed me?
Henri, as you enter heaven, what did you want to hear God say to you as you enter the pearly gates?
Henri, a person should drink a little, but often.